So welcome to this workshop, which is about co-creating the future of the SI Food Hub community. So thanks a lot for joining. Maybe just to start with, so I'm Jill, so I'm part of the core team, and I'm here with Sarah, who is the new representative of the hub, and Paloma, who is supporting us for the development of the community. So maybe a few words about the hub before starting. So to give you a bit of context, so as you may know, we are in kind of transition period with the restructuring of the team. So the former representative Adrian left a few months ago, and we welcomed Sarah and Maria. So Sarah, the new representative, and Maria, who is not here too. And they bring like a lot of fresh ideas and energy into the hub. So during these past few weeks, we had a lot of internal conversation about the hub vision, the strategy, and also the possible roadmap and agenda for the coming year. So the idea of today's session is to engage with you to further develop the food hub together and to co-create the shared vision around the food hub strategy and also gather like your interests. So we really want to hear from you what interests you in the hub, what topics or activity you would like to see in this hub, why are you part of the community, and I think that all these inputs will be quite valuable for co-creating a dynamic food hub in the coming year. So we will have around 1 hour and a half workshop. We'll start with a quick introduction about the hub for those who recently joined. We'll have a quick icebreaker, and then we will take like around 1 hour to the co-creation and ideation section of the workshop. And then we will take like 10 minutes to have your feedbacks or some input from your side. So maybe just before starting, I tell you a little bit about the hub, especially if there is like new people joining. So as you may know, the SI network community is a community of people who is interested in learning and applying ideas of system thinking to tackle like complex challenges in a diversity of areas. So it's composed about local and thematic hub. And we, as the Food Hub, we are part of the network of thematic hub, and we are trying to work to tackle like issues related to food. So we started the hub around 2 years ago with the idea of creating a space for bringing people together and organization together to learn, connect, and also cooperate around and about system thinking in the context of food. We have 3 main work streams of activities for now. We have a learning part of the activity. So we really try to provide like some learning opportunity, whether it is by sharing or creating food-related content in link to food, to system innovation or system thinking. We also try to provide a space for people to connect. So through the Food Hub webpage, we try to create a space for members and people to connect and try to enhance also new collaboration and partnership between members of the communities. And we also try to work on real-world projects and do like some co-creation workshop, challenge lab, with the objective of creating and co-creating together. So maybe before going to the discussion around the strategy and the agenda for the coming year, I take a few minutes to give you a quick overview about what we've done in the past year. So as mentioned, we had different kind of events. So we published 2 papers, so one position paper and principal paper that you can access through the Food Hub page. And we had like 2 events where we try to like present a quick overview about the content of the paper and also discuss with the member the content of the publication, have like feedback and try to improve the content of the paper together. We also had several events where we hosted some speakers who talked about their project or who present specific tools or case studies related to system innovation or system thinking applied to food. So the most recent speaker was Valentina. She shared like case studies on regenerative agriculture. We also had Lennart in the past, who talked about the need and challenge and drivers of scaling successful innovation in food and agriculture. And earlier, the previous year, we also had Viliana, who provided insight into system mapping, and we shared case studies of food system mapping. And more recently, we also had like some co-creation session. One co-creation session with the SI London Hub. It was in January, I think, where we explored an idea around what an urban food system fit for the challenge of the 21st century might look like. And previously this month, we also had co-host the first SI Challenge Lab, where we try to tackle the question, how might we develop a climate resilient food system? And the last event was also a networking event. We had our first networking event where we try to start engaging with members and discuss around like shared interest and expectation for the hub. So maybe I can let you the floor, Sarah. So we go to the icebreaker and then the workshop.
Great, thank you so much, Jill. All right, let me just kind of give you a brief overview of what we're doing today. So this is our quick icebreaker, which we'll get to. And then we'll take a minute to recap, just as Jill mentioned, that there's already been a workshop. And so we've captured all of that content and analyzed it and looked at it. And so these are some of the things that came out of that, along with a few quotes from some of the participants. Then we'll do an ideation workshop around connecting, learning, and creating. And from there, we'll expand on each one of those to come out the other end with where are we going. So as mentioned, this is a co-creation. This is where all of your ideas will yield a strategy. And from there, we will create a timeline that reflects the strategy that we're creating today, along with a video for those who cannot be here, so that everybody is aligned. Once we build out that strategy, our approach is to every time we run a workshop or an event around that strategy, we'll highlight, give you a preview on LinkedIn, social media, and in the network about what you're going to expect. And also a recap, because what we want to do is kind of show this journey along the way that we're co-creating here and make sure we're capturing it, because we don't expect you to show up to everything all the time. And so, but we want to make sure you feel a part of the journey and you know where we're at on this strategy. So it'll be something that will be like kind of our source of truth. So you can always go to the strategy to understand where we're at and what we're planning. Does that sound good for everybody? Do we have any questions, concerns? We got a thumbs up from Paloma. Anybody else want to, unmute themselves and say something? Okay. So before we could jump into the icebreaker, I think it's really important for us to talk about values, because we think that what you value is really, really important to who you are. And so what we want to do now is to ideate on that. So the icebreaker is going to talk about 4 things about you. What do you value from a community? aka this community, or any community. Think about communities beyond the SI network. What do you value about them? What do they bring to you? And maybe what do you bring to them? And so what do you value from a connection? This could be an intimate connection with, friends, colleagues, community members. What is that you value from that? And then what do you value about food? Is it knowing your farmer? Is it the quality and the taste? And then we asked a totally random one. What is your superpower? This is, we want to build a community where we know each other on a deeper level. So we want to know, what is your superpower? It could be anything of the sort. So what we're gonna do is set a timer, and we're just gonna sit here for 5 minutes. You can hop around. You don't have to, we're not gonna go all in one. So this is, if let's say you're not on a Miro and you're on your phone, Paloma, amazing Paloma, will be here to back you up. You can feel free to put it in the comments, and she will make sure it gets onto one of these sticky notes. So if you already know, feel free to grab one of these sticky notes and start. I already have some people who are putting some things down, which is great. So yeah, we have somebody meeting like-minded people. I love that. Thank you. All right, so let's set a timer. Let me set a timer.
Paloma, I'm sorry, I don't have access to the Miro board. Would you be able to write this in for me?
Yeah. So if you just want to put it in the chat, she'll go ahead and so maybe it's like what you value community connection, so she knows where to put it, but feel free.
Would you mind if I just speak it? Because I don't have
Yeah,
access
yeah.
to
Oh,
doing any
sure.
typing right now.
Oh,
Sure.
okay, sorry.
No, it's all right. I think cohesion is important, and the value of counting on relationships in community. So the relationships are forming and supporting relationships in community is important. That's what I value from community. It's the creating and supporting relationships.
I'm gonna put supporting relationships and supportive relationships. So we have like, okay, well, we're starting with community, so we'll start here. So being part of the community. That's interesting. I like that, being part of it, but what does that mean to be part of a community? Does that mean like you are leading an event? Does that mean, I don't know who wrote that, so if you can unmute yourself and share. I just am interested in knowing more about what you mean.
That was me.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you mean?
I mean, being a part of, being around people, being belonging to something. Guess that's what I mean.
I like that. Belonging, goodwill. I like that. To learn and share. Working towards a shared vision. Having a trusted. All right, amazing. If we haven't already shifted, you can sit there with community, but let's shift to make sure connections. What do you value from a connection? I'm gonna say like an openness. Like, oh, open. Some of the best connections I have is that open to receive. Actually, that's what I'm gonna say.
I think there's an element of inclusivity that I enjoy from connectedness, and that mutual respect. The mutuality, I think, is the important piece. So mutuality in connecting with people.
Yeah, I like that. I think that's super important. Yeah, willingness to learn. And I think it's so important too with connections, like accepting of feedback and being open, knowing there's so many ways to go about something and not being closed off to new thoughts. Equity.
That open mindset is very important for sure.
Yeah, so let's add that in there if it's not right.
And openness to different, and you had mentioned it as well, like this sense of interculturality, this openness to different ways of viewing our world based on your background. And so that ability to be able to hold tension without without being upset by them, being able to understand that there's a both and perspective when you live in a community, that it's not just one perspective that will foster well-being, And that's the other thing. Connections also foster well-being. So I think psychological, emotional well-being is also something that comes out of connection with others.
Yeah, I agree. And you want to leave a connection feeling almost inspired and excited. You know, I don't know if you've ever been with a connection where it's like you walked away and it was like, oof, that was exhausting, or, you know, but we want those
Or wow, I
connections
want to know more.
uplifting. Yeah,
Yeah.
uplifting. Yeah. And then, ooh, my favorite, food. Okay, so yeah, what do we value? Low impact on earth, importance of well-being, environmentally sustainable, eating it. Thank you. I don't know who wrote that, but I love that. Yes, I value eating it as well.
The variety and versatility of food. Food
Yeah, for sure.
isn't just for our consumption, for our body functioning, but food can also be medicine.
Yes, food is
It can-
medicine. Thank you for that. Okay, and then everybody, you put down your superpower, and then can move on.
Seeing in between seeing in the gaps, seeing in between the lines. And also I speak various languages, so multilingualism, multiculturalism.
Amazing. New combinations for my curiosity. I already standing with end in mind. I'm sorry, Michael, I already know that's you. I don't even need to like double check that. That's how I actually met Michael, was talking about this. Okay. Thank you so much for all of this. I think it will be incredibly valuable when we kind of capture these and cluster them and see similarities. So this will be part of the end strategy, was like, what is this shared, what do we value as a community? Because we are building it as we speak. So let's shift gears to the actual ideation workshop. So, but before that, these were some of the things that we sat down together, our core team, and we looked at what and why and activities and the things that we wanted to bring to the community. So we're going to, hopefully you can get active. So you see these dots here. You get 4 dots, not 5, Sadesh. You get 4. I know. You're always trying to put more dots. I'm just kidding. I just like to call you out. So anywho, so you get 4 dots, and when you get in here, I'm going to quickly go through them. And if something just resonates with you and you really love it, and you can stick that dot there. If that you just like will have one thing and you want all 4 dots on it, you're welcome to do that. You can do whatever you want, just with 4 dots though, not 5. And so we'll go through these sections here together, and then as you go, you can put your dots, as I mentioned, and then we'll see about what's just interesting and resonates with you. Okay, any questions or anything before I jump into our what are we trying to do and why are we trying to do it? Okay, so for the first one, we have systems thinking and innovation. So we want to facilitate the systems perspective. Obviously, we want to bring practical application of systems thinking, spread systems thinking, and create the space for systems innovation. So maybe you like one of these, how we worded it better or something. So please feel free to put a dot if you think systems thinking and innovation, that is actually what we're doing. But what else we're doing is building capacity and learning. So we want to capacity building and learning about food systems, connecting and engaging with people, and like we're talking about, new perspectives here. So we also have community and collaboration, empowerment and impact, understanding and addressing complexities, practice and application, repository of content, awareness, engagement. So I'm not going to read all these because we'll give you some time to kind of review them and vote. But let's go through some of these activities that we talk about, we think are important. After this, you might hear from one of us because we are a big believer of one-on-one coffee chats. Many of you I've already met through a one-on-one coffee chat, and I think it's so important to build that kind of relationship one-on-one and as we continue through here as a group. So we would like to do things like that. maybe annual events, conferences, workshops, activities around publications and media. Maybe you decide we should do more position papers and maybe not a periodical. So your vote can go whichever way. Capacity building and learning. These are some of the others. Community and collaboration and content creation. Of course, we always made the feedback from the last one. Some of you went to the last event. And in that feedback, this was some of the things that that people spoke about. So specific area focus. We'll dive into this because I think this is a big thing for us to talk about as a community. What do we want to focus our area on? Like, what are our interests in this community? Collaboration and co-creation, knowledge sharing and ideas, and networking and connections. And of course, we love quotes from people. So as I mentioned, these were some of the quotes that were taken from the last workshop, and I wanted to bring it into here so you know that your words remain with us as we continue and build out this strategy. So enough talking. I'm going to put 5 minutes back on here, read through it, kind of breeze over it. You get 4 dots again, and feel free to put them wherever you like on the board around these 3 sections, the what and the why, activities, and maybe important input. Any questions or anything before I launch this clock? All right, it's ticking. All right, I see a lot of community and collaboration is very important, which is great to hear. Is everybody done voting? Any last votes? All right, so we'll keep this in mind as we go. I'm going to go ahead and stop that since I think everybody's kind of voted. So thank you for that. So now is where more participation is hopefully exciting for you. So this is the connecting bit that we were talking about. So the idea is, how can we create and sustain meaningful connections? So Magdalena, I knew you were going to be here. So she and I have been talking a lot about sensing journeys. And so this is something I put in here as an example that you could use. And so the idea here is that we'll do something quite similar. We're just, put as many ideas. How can we create and sustain meaningful connections? What do you think? And then what we'll do from there is we'll vote, and then we'll take one of these ideas, for instance, like a sensing journey, and maybe we expand on that. What does a sensing journey mean? And for me, like investigative research, like detectives, like people go out in the community, like all of us, we all get a stakeholder or a key actor after we mapped it, and then we go and interview that person, and we bring back that interview to this community, and we share about it together. This was inspired by Magdalena, thank you very much. But this was one way where you can like meaningful connections with the community, not only just this community, but maybe your broader community. And so this was just one example of what that could look like. So we're just going to spend a few minutes here, think about how we can create and sustain meaningful connections like we were talking about. And this is all about ideation. So as many ideas we can come up with, the better, so we have more things to vote on. All right, any questions or anything before we start ideating around this? All righty, let's do it then.
And just to mention that again, if someone cannot write or access in Miro, then just share in the chat, and
Yeah,
I will
perfect.
put it out.
Or just let us know.
Yeah, or maybe open.
Yeah. I'm gonna repeat myself. We have Frederic. Am I pronouncing that right? I hope. Just joined. I just want to make sure you are filled in on what we are doing. Are you with us? Well, I'll repeat anyway for you. Frederic, what we're doing is we are ideating on this question. How can we create and sustain meaningful connections? I gave one example of a sensing journey, connecting with key actors and people outside of maybe this initial community that we could do like an investigative research, like detectives, and interview them for this kind of sensing journey. So if you have any questions, feel free to write it in the chat. I'm not sure if I like the uptown funk, but we're gonna sit with it, see what happens. I see Sadesh nodding, so we got one who's down. All right, Kenneth, no worries. Just type in what you think in the chat and we will sort it out for you. We'll put it on the post-it and read it out for you if you want. Ah, no worries, Frederic. Happy to have you here. Feel free to listen in. And feel free to unmute yourself if you want to share. I know, Paula, if you have some ideas.
Yeah, I'm just wondering at what instances we're inviting people into this exercise, say, for example, of creating meaningful connections. So for example, today, having been alerted that I was interested in this particular session of co-creation, but being part of the SI community, then I would have already been alerted to it. But how do you alert people who are outside of that community who might be also interested? So where is your outreach? I
Yeah.
think I guess my question. How is your outreach being applied? And then how is it you're encouraging people who are like-minded, are interested in this topic and have something useful to say, being connected to this space? So I think, how are the connections being built is the question. And how do you actively seek the gaps in the types of connections that you're looking to make? So, have you done an analysis of the sorts of connections that would be fruitful for continuity and for regeneration of this space, but also for active use?
Hmm. Yeah, so how can we
I don't know
capture
how to put
that?
that on a
So
sticky note, though.
yeah, that's what I was looking for. I put down outreach for you, and also I put
Yeah.
down personal network, but then maybe we could just look like how our connections built as well.
Yeah.
I think it's gonna
Yeah.
come down to, I'm sure there's other ideas, but maybe personal network. We all go out into our web and, pull people in to our own network that way, kind of thing.
It brought me and put me in mind of a useful resource that I obtained from the FIDO networks with regards to building communities, and then the different elements that are involved with creating meaningful connection. I'm going to find it and I see if I can pop it into the chat here.
Yeah, be great. Okay, so I'm gonna turn back on the music, and in that time we're gonna do the same thing. Maybe these dots are a little too big for what we're dealing with here. Let's shrink them down. And go ahead and let's vote on them. Again, you have 4 votes. You can put if you really, really love an idea, like I love Magdalena's sensing journey, so I might put all 4 in there. But maybe you want to, put all 4 in one or spread them out as you see fit. But this is the time. If you still want to put a few ideas, put it. But let's close this out so we can expand on it a little bit more. So here comes that funk. Alrighty, so it looks like we have some winners. I think I pitched the sensing journey a little bit too, so everyone hopped on that. So either I'm good at pitching or it's just a great idea. I do think it's just a great idea. So we have working together on defined activities as part of a challenge. So that's a little bit bigger to crack. We'll jump into that. Shared pain, love the problem first. I don't know, it sounds like a Michael thing, but somebody else who shared that? Is that you, Michael? No? You're on.
No, I just
no.
wanted to comment there. I like your sensing journeys, and I thought that was great. And it kind of triggered in terms of, listen, the best way to get to know people is to work together in a task, you know, something that's interesting. I like your sensing journey in the sense of kind of active research, you know, that we could bring back. And I guess if it was framed well and in the context of a broader activity, I mean that detective work and working together with each other would be a good way to get to know each other. But I really liked your point there, which is, how do we know whether a connection is going to be meaningful and valued?
Mhm.
And I just like, you know, it's very difficult to get to know people, and what they do and who they are and what they're interested in and what they bring and how they work and all of those kind of things. So my fundamental on this is we can talk about connections and having people in our network and people in our ecosystem, but what is the strength?
No, Michael, you muted yourself. Or maybe.
Okay, that was a good one. I think the question, you know, not just for food, but for us generally is how do we create connections that are richer, that are valued,
Yeah.
that are not
Well,
about knowing somebody's name, but knowing about something about them. And what I'm suggesting is that, you know, how can we characterize people or profile people or find a way to see who they are and what they're interested in, how they do and how they work and what they're focused on and what kind of work they're doing in the background, and how would that connect with me? I mean, I can only see a connection in terms of a possibility. Is it something that I'm looking for whatever reason, or is it something that I can believe that I can connect with and share and contribute to? And I
Right.
can't see a basis for that. And I think maybe this could be an opportunity for us to think differently about how we create connections that are more than just, I know somebody's name. If you go to an event, for example, and you look at the participants, all you can see is somebody's name. You know nothing about them whatsoever. So how would we encourage in this food network a richer expression of the value that each individuals bring in order to be able to connect more easily and productively with each other?
Yeah.
I think that's a fundamental for me, you know, quite apart from the shared mission and purpose and all of those good things. So that's my sixpence.
No, and I love that, and I think we should sit here for a little bit longer, Michael, because I think you bring up a very important point. Anybody else want to say anything before we jump a little bit deeper and dive into that, what Michael was talking about?
Yeah, I can do so from our experience at Food Valley. We have a sort of a curated model, so you need to be identified to enter the community. And that's maybe not even sufficient enough, because we have also people who are just sitting and watching and not really participating, but we're now thinking of making a sort of a social contract as to what are my ambitions, what would I like to achieve with this community, what is my role, do I understand my role, what can I contribute to my role, what do I need, and sort of monitor along the way the relationship, if the relationship actually is growing. And when it's not growing, well, and yeah, is the community really the right place for you?
Yeah, I love that.
Caroline,
But
can I just ask?
we're struggling, we're also struggling to do that.
Caroline, can I just ask you a quick question? Is Food Valley similar to Health Valley?
Well, there are so many different valleys, of course.
Okay, well,
Valley and Health Valley.
even in the Netherlands when there are no hills.
Yeah, no, yeah, there is sort of a trend of having values everywhere. But this one, we are 20 years old now.
Okay.
So I think we're one of the others in the Wageningen base. So it's actually
Okay. Yeah. Well, Wageningen is really the place, isn't it?
Yeah,
In terms
yeah,
of
yeah,
food research,
yeah.
agricultural research.
Yeah. And
Interesting.
and we started sort of as a network organization, and 6 years ago, we started our first community, the protein community, which was at first really a network organization, a network community, but now we're trying to have the communities as rich breeding grounds for collaborative action. So, for instance, to work on specific demand questions or to a common understanding and definitions before actually starting to make progress, or, for instance, offering gateways within the ecosystem to get access to funding, get access to learning possibilities, to access to whatever.
Now, I was kind of asking that in with a specific, question in the back of my mind, which is quite really in terms of the comparison of the evolution of Food Valley, and where we are, as a food systems network collaboration. And what is your, I mean, there seems to be a difference in terms of the intention and the mandate of the organization, connecting with funding, connecting with partners, all of those kind of things, which might not be the mandate for us. But I think my sort of question coming into this was also really very much around what is our intent, what is our focus, what is it that we believe that we want to change. And I apologize if I haven't I picked up on the previous work. And it feels like, the ability to be clear about a piece of the entire food system that we want to work on, and we can work on in a systematic way together, might be a good way to get started, rather than try and solve the whole system, which is kind of impossible.
We've sort of an exploding portfolio on projects and collaborative action. So, and we're an organization of 35 people, so we can't manage the whole food transition. So we're in the process of finding out where our superpower is, to be honest. So we need to focus. We're in the early stage of the transition, so it's not about, of course, we want to create a ripple effect towards new viable sectors and a new viable system. But actually, it's just our strength, I think, is that it's just starting in the early stage of the transition, where you have these bunch of crazy people who can't find one another, and then first have a sort of a tribe, and from there give them more power by connecting them and solving collective barriers. I think that's where our sweet spot is.
And I guess, sorry, I don't, we can have a conversation offline, I'd love to. But I think that the question for me is really, we're kind of coalescing around some knowledge and some intent, and you guys, there's some great work being done in trying to get a focus in the direction and a strategy, and it feels like that's not crispy yet in some way. Would that be fair? Jill, I can see you looking at me like I'm crazy. What's the first thing that we really want to solve, that shows that we are coming together as a community, we are working together in a way that allows it, what would be the thing that we would have written at the end of the project? What will it what are all of the things that it will demonstrate, and how do we shape a project and do that as a demonstration? What would that be about? Is there something that we can connect into from the Food Valley agenda usefully, for example, that we could piggyback on that or leverage on that or advance an agenda in our own particular way? I don't know. I mean, just ideas.
I can speak of just an idea as well. So I'm working alongside EIT Food, which is the European Innovation and Technology. They're actually funding, I'm actually been awarded to their program with my personal project around obviously food. And so they would be a great place for us to, you know, do these kinds of challenge. I said a shared challenge can unify people around something that we can do, like a co-creation that then it becomes an extension lab. And from there, we can build out almost like a kind of a pitch deck or something, send it to people like EIT Food, who are always constantly accepting projects. And then if and when you pull a team together and then move it into the next phase, which each phase is a larger chunk of money. So the first initial phase is 2,000 a month, and then the next one being 40,000. And so therefore a small team could then take it forward and continue forward. So that's just one example of what we can do either with you or with the Valley, or with some of the other partners like EIT. So just to get you thinking, Michael.
I have
think
a suggestion with regards to the original question that we were asking in terms of what creates meaningful connections. And I was listening to what everyone was saying. I think that there's if you want to take it from, you know, what are the resources that are out there that could possibly help us engage people? Those are really great resources. But I'm just wondering, in terms of this particular food hub, when we're talking about meaningful connections, it really puts me in mind of the questions that this community weaving organization has put together in a handbook. And I put the link into the chat. They ask 5 questions. You know, what's the possibility that brings us together? What are the relationships that hold us together? What are the rituals that connect us together? And rituals are kind of important. They can be anything. The roles that we can play, and what are our individual and collective journeys. So if we can, as a hub, answer those questions, because the idea is to create that meaningfulness in the investiture of our own time and energy and resources to, you know, pitch into the collective effectiveness of the hub, and also building the relationships amongst us, then that actually allows for a greater sense of cohesion, and then moving forward into, well, then what are the resources that we can all pull together, like what we're seeing in the chat, for example, right? So if there's a possibility for us to sort of look at, you know, and the handbook is in the linked in there, as well as the website for the actual community weaving org. These are free, by the way, these resources. And they're based on many years of research into what are effective communities. I happen to use it with my community, and I have another women's circle community, and we use a very similar type of methodology to this. So I found it particularly effective in terms of looking at community cohesion and what's meaningful to each one of the members. So if each one of us wants to look at the questions and answer for ourselves, and then come together and do a pooling of that, then I think that will allow for further representation of each person within the hub, and then sort of finding our way as to how we can mutually strengthen those relationships. And one other thing that I found was really important in terms of this whole combination, like when we're looking at how we participate in this hub. Today, myself, I could only participate just by speaking. Normally, I like to participate with the Moreau board, as well as, you know, more information in the chat, apart from also speaking. But I think if there were moments within the time that we have allotted together to meet, not just the head requirements. I mean, a lot of us are intellectually curious, but also, like, how does it speak to us from an embodied experience, from our heart experience? And then what can we take away with us to use our hands? So that head, heart, hands experience is a holistic model that allows people to feel more invested within a community, and also more invested in participating continually in these types of events, or, you know, invitations to a hub, for example.
Yeah, thank you for that. I agree. And this is a nice segue to the next section, which taking into consideration the time, we have to jump, but I'm going to leave some of this empty here and we're going to feel free to. So based off of what we said, I changed a few too. The sensing journeys, feel free to add some in there, ideas or what that looks like in this kind of community model. How do we create meaningful connections, kind of what you said, Michael, and we went and here is some curated models and social contract, thanks to you, Caroline. And then ending here, this shared pain, love the problem first, so maybe unification around a shared challenge where we shape a project together. And what does that look like? And then at the end, we talked about, and I switched this to because I love it. I'll take a closer look. I think I'm missing one, but the possibilities, rituals, roles, and journeys. So paying attention to the head, heart, and hands. And I say that's a nice segue into the next bit. So feel free to keep here. But as we move, so we're connecting to the learning. And even though we're like a community typical, like, you know, we want to see this as more of a longer journey, not just a one-off event, a one-off workshop, right? So when I put in the book club first because I wanted to get us thinking outside of a one-off event. And you were talking about using your head, heart, and hands. So this could be something where, maybe this becomes we say a book club. Okay, what kind of books are we interested in, and and maybe every 2 weeks, maybe you don't have to show up, but other people who are interested in talking about like dirt to soil. We've been talking about that one, Magdalena, right? Dirt to soil. I think I said it correctly. And other books doesn't necessarily have to be around, systems thinking or systems thinking for social change, which I think was an exceptional book. We could do a few chapters on that or a whole series on that. So when we talk about learning, there's so many toolkits and canvases, there's co-creation. So I want us to just ideate, think outside the box of what could learning environments look like with this specific community. You know, do we, do I do a live event at a farm because I'm always interviewing farmers and people tap in, so I just want to get you thinking, but we're going to go back to the funk so we can ideate on this question. How can we design and implement effective learning experience in this food hub? Any questions or anything before we start this ideation? All righty, let's jump in then.
Yeah, thank you all. So sorry I have to leave. It's really been a pleasure. So hope to meet up next time. I'm following your event agenda. And
okay, and you'll see the strategy. You'll see all your hard work. Thank you for participating and sharing your ideas, and you'll see it in the strategy soon. And if you want to connect with a one-on-one coffee chat, feel free so we can talk further about these things.
Yeah.
But thank you for your time.
Yeah, and thank you all. Thank you, Sarah.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Talk soon. Bye-bye. Okay. And Paula, I want to make sure that you're, do you want to share anything I can add for you on the Post-its? Okay, well, let's, I feel like people are still writing, which is great. But Michael, I like what you said, depends on the why of the learning. So if we're building this kind of learning journey, does everybody need to know their individual why? And we should be aware of that as the community, or what are your thoughts? Interested to know.
I was kind of, there are two things. Yeah, what is the why and what's your purpose, and how does this food purpose connect with your purpose generally, for your better planet for all and brighter futures, etc. But I think the learning is, what is it that you are wanting to learn? Are you wanting to learn a framework or a technique, or are you trying to appreciate a picture or get a better understanding of a map, or is there something specific that you want to be able to do?
Yeah.
How broad is it? So,
Well,
or how specific is it? And then, if we say this is about knowledge, okay, so why do I want to know this? Just because I want to know, because I'm curious, because I want to understand it, or because I want to do something with it? So what is the thing that I need to learn in order to be able to do this thing that I'm interested in? So I think, the thinking about learning experiences, how do we design that, and how do we make that happen, must follow the question of why are we learning in the first place?
Yeah, I think, well, and I'm only speaking on behalf of the representative for the Food Hub, but I think it's why you're doing it is so that you can integrate it into your own life, whatever that looks like for you. So you can apply what you learned, the knowledge and things, to your own life.
Well, it might be your
And work.
life, or it might be your project, or it might be your work, or it might be your organization. So
Yeah.
in wanting to learn, there might be something specific about the technique or the framework, or systems thinking, or the application of system thinking processes, or the application to a specific context or some particular people. Is it that I want to learn how to communicate the concepts? Or is it that I want to help other people to understand the concept by practicing them? Is it that I want to understand a complex system in order to be able to engage with it? Is it a particular technique within, let's say, systems thinking that I need to understand and feel confident in? So why is it that I'm learning? And then we can say, what would be the modality? What would be the experience, or the event, or the interaction that would enable that learning? And what would be the form of that?
So what I'm hearing from you, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that would be more of a self-guided journey through the community. So what you need may change depending on where you're at, right? So is it us, the community, guiding you individually, or is it we're responsible for that shared learning experience and we provide that journey?
Maybe the question is really, I imagine people have shared needs, or shared learning needs. What are those? If we understand those, then that will help us respond. So why are you here? What are you trying to learn? How do you want to apply it? Why is this relevant to you? What are you seeking to do with it? What is difficult for you? How would you overcome that? And then let's say the SI network as a platform can respond and say, okay, yeah, there's some conceptual learning, or some applied learning, or some, let's say, applicate case studies that might be helpful. And here are some people that you might want to talk to.
Yeah. No, I see your point. And Siddhesh, I'm going to let you jump in real quick too before I respond again.
Yeah, so basically, when I'm also looking at different hubs and my interaction with every one of you, and the kind of problems we are trying to solve, especially with applying systems thinking with respect to sustainability, right? Be it food hub, or be it environment hub, right? We have all common connections. What our fight is, I realized, is not fight, I will say that's the wrong term, but what we are actually trying to achieve is, we are trying to, I will, as of now, I will use the word fight against convenience, right? Whatever we are developing, that is something against convenience, right? Be it food systems, right? The current, how we can bring the change, where people are looking for convenience, easy food, using apps for food delivery, using plastic for packaging, right? Any issue to that, it boils down to the convenience. Our fight as systems thinkers is against this convenient systems, and the question boils down to that. So everything what we are developing, the content, and as systems thinker, we should see as to what kind of systems we can develop which will help to change this mental models of the current systems that we are living in. And that is mostly convenience, because we also are so much addicted to convenience ourselves as systems thinkers. And achieving minimalism for us also is a tough task. So that's Gandhi's quote, right? Be the change you want to see. So that's something we should look in all the hubs, I think, like, for what that is what we are trying to achieve actually, even with the food hub. The systems, current systems, which are based on convenience.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying, and quite interesting. I'm just reading some others. Learning and overlaps between project as professional. Does anybody want to share anything else before we drop some of these dots? So if you want to, let's go ahead and vote so we can move some of these forward, because I put here, Michael, and I like this one because shared learning needs. And so you mentioned a bunch of things that we need to take into consideration. So maybe you can ideate a little bit around, how do we identify people's, do we do a survey? Maybe that's one way. Yeah, I can spell right. A survey, this could be like the one-on-one chat to get to know people. But that takes time. A survey is quick and convenient, like Sinesh was mentioning. But a one-on-one chat takes more time, but you capture more.
I'd really like to do more case studies of different models of food systems and food delivery. Like, for example, if we're looking at, say, community, a communal gardens, community food garden, or even a backyard garden, or foraging, food foraging. Those are, food foraging is some people are aware of it, but I think there's not enough in the sort of the broader community that could indicate, especially if you're in an urban environment where you do have some, parks that could have small plots that are dedicated to local species that also produce foods. So parks as also food forests in urban centers, for example. I think that there are possibilities for in rural areas. The notion of food and sustainability and how you plant your food is very different from urban centers where people are used to going to markets and supermarkets to get their food, to buy their food, as opposed to produce it themselves or to forage it for themselves. And so I think that there's a learning curve that a lot of people in around the world and in different cultures and climates. So biome diversity in terms of what's in season in your biome, and what can also be transferable in terms of versatility of foods, what will work in different biomes, and then what can you learn from the application of the food use and distribution in one biome as opposed to another. just having lived in South America for a very long time, I realized that a lot of foods that are grown in South America, some of them will also grow in Canada, where I happen to live. But then how do we apply, permaculture principles to be able to make them sustainable here? So
Yeah,
what's
and I think this,
sustainable? Well,
yeah, I think that go like into this like practical learning, applications of volunteering, kind of these sensing journeys kinds of things. So if it's okay with you, I put a red dot on this one because it was kind of around similar things of what you're talking about here. If anybody else wants to put any more dots when we continue, so we can highlight before we jump to the last bit. I think this was super nice to hear about some important
Also-
things like, go ahead.
sorry, just one other thing that I wanted to mention. What one culture or one society views as food, others do not. I think it's important to look at, well, what is food? What could be food? How can food be produced, and what do we view as food? Some societies don't eat meat. Other societies won't eat insects. And so, when we're looking at it, we need to look at what's the cultural lens that we're looking at it from, and how do we broaden our mind view to be able to see that food can come from a variety of sources, also historical sources for food that we no longer employ.
Yeah, I put that down for you. Anya, did you have your hand raised or was that an accident?
Oh yeah, just touching upon that, I think there's a huge opportunity to just share where some people need help, and the volunteering experiences could almost be connected to learning tools. So yeah, there's a huge opportunity there.
Yeah, thank you for that. I put it, where do people need help to identify? Great, and ideally what we would do is pull some of these through and keep ideating, but I think we did a lot here and we can continue these conversations. So anybody want to mention anything before we jump into the last one? Challenge Labs, is that highlighted? So maybe let's do this one real quick. We have Challenge Labs, let's put it over here. Maybe on the challenge lab, you want to ideate, what kind of challenge lab do you want to see? What kind of theme, even better, do you want to maybe see from the community? Or how do we get the community to pick one thing to censor? That I
That's
think is the
interesting.
hardest question, is how do we unify people around one challenge? Do we, like, what are you saying, send a survey and ask people to do challenge questions, and then we do a vote, kind of like what Anya did with the book club, what's next kind of thing, and the most votes wins, and that's the challenge lab we're all gonna rally behind?
Well, maybe can I suggest we try and think about what is the thing that we most want to change?
Well, what we want to change or create?
Or change, yes, what change do we want to bring? I mean, what is the thing that we think would be a great illustration or a great contribution in some way? Because we all believe that doing these projects in a more considered way is going to be useful. And so how do we show that? And what is the quantum change in performance that we want to achieve? And therefore, what is the challenge that we want to start with? So, for example, in the Netherlands, for in healthcare, as you know, we want to transition from sick care to well-being, and the objective is to increase the number of healthy years by 5 and reduce health inequity by 30%.
Yeah.
So, what is our challenge for the food lab? What challenge do we set ourselves? How would we know whether we've been successful? What are our metrics of performance? What is the change that we believe that we can help deliver one way and the other? And then what is the challenge related to that we believe we could start with?
Yeah, one approach could be just looking at the SDG goals around food and looking at what that they've selected as the outcome that we want to see by 2050. And then, like you like to do, Michael, backtrack to
Well, yeah,
the actual
we
challenge
could.
lab.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should also think about from Caroline's perspective, because they've had 20 years of thinking about this. What are the transitions that they believe are important and critical and key? And which ones of those do we believe we can work into or work next to? And what would the frame of that project look like? Because there may be, several ways of solving it, depending on where we are at the value chain. What kind of innovations from a systemic perspective could we imagine? And how would we run that as a series of projects that might involve a number of teams working alongside each other, but maybe with some cross-fertilization in trying to come up with ways and create propositions for this. Propositions, not papers. Propositions, not, people in rooms. So when I say challenge lab, this is not just, generally coming together and doing a bit of exploration and then saying we know more than we did 6 weeks ago. What I would be interested in is how do we get people to develop new and different propositions, and these are better propositions, we believe, because they are developed with systems thinking.
Yeah, and the reason I like that.
That's the acid test, surely.
Yeah. And before I jump in again, Sidesh, go ahead.
Yeah, so I had to add to what Michael is saying, right? Maybe what can be done as a simple case study, because involving many actors at this time might be not possible. So what if there is someone in the food hub who's actually working to solve some in their locality problems with food, right? We take it as a challenge and help that person together to work on that case study with that person, and that becomes our case study, and we actually see it getting implemented, because not everyone, like I don't work in the food sector, so but I will like to help based on my systems thinking knowledge and all, how we can apply systems thinking and systems innovation to those. But that person who is actually working will get the community's help to bring that change, and it becomes our case study. That can be interesting. So if we have someone like that, that can be a start.
Well, I mean, it was interesting to hear your EIT food. I just looked them up very quickly. I mean, to run a project which is connected with their agenda, but we do it in our own special way, as a starting point, that's our case study. How could we get this funded through through some collaboration partners, or some regional funding or national funding, or commercial funding, because we're kind of, I think this is the point, this is Sidesh is picking up, is how do we actually find a way to do a project that is funded, not to make us rich, but in order to allow us the means to deliver the project.
Yeah.
How could we get started? I mean, it doesn't matter so much as, it may not be the ultimate project that we always wanted to do, but how could we get started doing something that is connected into existing agendas, and where we have goodwill or connections or a bit of funding or something like that would enable us to get started. That's my strong recommendation.
Yeah, and that's why I put the SDG goals, is because my project is directly aligned with the SDG goals. Otherwise, it would not have been picked up and awarded for that program. So we need to keep those things in mind. Like, what do we need to keep in mind that we position ourselves? And that's why the SDG goals can be an important element to take into consideration when we're talking about, potential challenges.
With regard to the sub goals of the that refer to food, perhaps we could break those out and then have further conversations around that. One of the things that I think is really important is to look at food versatility, and as a challenge, really. So not only what do we think is food, But then how can different foods, like, what Anya put in the chat, in terms of milk, what is milk and how can you use it? But also like things are like, what is lentils? My family was very, there's some background noise right now. Sorry, my family was very surprised when I used lentils as a non-meat gravy, because I chose to do something that was non-meat for the celebration that we had. And so I used lentils as the base for a non-meat gravy. Not everybody would think to do gravy out of lentils, but it worked brilliantly and very tasty. So the point is, how do we use our food? Do we stick to our traditional culturally biased mental models of how milk or rice or bread, or any other, or meat can be used as either a main or a side or a dessert? Or can we mix it up? Like if we were going to say carrots, how can you use carrots as your main? How can you use your carrots as your dessert, as your breakfast? So changing up the paradigm for our versatility of different types of foods. I think that would be a really interesting lab. In fact, we could easily gamify it, sort of like a Jeopardy challenge, perhaps. Or, the most number of ways of preparing, I don't know, onions for breakfast would be an example of how you would get people's interest in participating in a game edutainment type of way, but also get their brains thinking about, and also learn from other people about different ways that food can be versatile. I also really think it's important to look at food as medicine. I mentioned that before. So if we wanted to have a food as medicine lab, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, I think that's great. And we have that written down. And thank you all for the learning bit. I think there's so many things that we need to take into consideration and look a little bit deeper at. But just to cap everything off, we only have like about 5-7 minutes left. So maybe we can just sit here and think and talk about this one a little bit. But I don't think maybe we should dive into it. But we've been kind of talking about it already. So this co-creation of innovative solutions. So I think I'm hearing from you, Michael, that you want our project, some sort of unification around a project, right? Would be the best thing for co-creation around. So we obviously have challenge labs, around food as medicine and other things. Anything else we want to, when we're thinking about co-creation around innovative solutions? This partnership, I think, we've been talking about, like, partnerships are super important, like EIT and other opportunities. What does that look like? What I haven't really heard that much about is co-creation of, like, bringing in speakers and experts to co-create with, how do we bring in key stakeholders around co-creation? At what point do they become really important? Do you need them at the beginning when you're just like unpacking a challenge? When we're talking about co-creation, when do you think these experts and these actors are so important that we need to bring them into our community? Just some things to think about, and hope. Anybody have any thoughts or anything you'd like to add about this co-creation or anything that I've just said? We can also just sit here for a minute and kind of recap, if to cap this
So I
off.
just wanted to say something to that. So a challenge, a project might not be a single project. It might be a set of projects framed within a challenge. So how might we do this? How might we solve food as medicine? What are the different ways in which we can do this? Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Now, when you think about that challenge and you think about partners and stakeholders, those are the people who should be involved at the beginning in in framing the challenge. So why are we doing this? Why is this important? How would what you're doing be additive to what we're doing? And if you came up with solutions, what are we going to do with them? What do we commit to doing with them? I've seen many innovation efforts where the team sweats, and at the end of the day, the thing is not implemented or invested in. So how we set up the challenge with stakeholders and sponsors from the beginning is really important. So let's not work away and then hope and imagine that they might like what we do and they might find inspiration from that and take it away and do it themselves. If our intention is to change things, then they must be implemented. So we must start with the end in mind. Who would benefit from an intervention or an innovation that we have in mind? Who cares? Why would they do it? Is it important enough for them, or are we just amusing ourselves by engaging intellectually or engaging energetically in running around doing something that nobody really cares about, or we imagine that they care about? So if we start by saying, okay, so who cares if we solve this part of the food challenge, the food transition? Who are the stakeholders? What are they doing? What aren't they doing? What would be great if we, so we're looking for a performance gap. What is not being done, but we see could be done in a different way using our particular view of the world and our tools and techniques. Okay, so how do we articulate that, and how do we see whether those stakeholders are interested enough to support us in our doing?
But I just want to be devil's advocate, Michael, because I enjoy that, as you already know from our first interaction together.
Sure.
My personal project was just, I brought it to EIT and they then invested back into me. And so that was a thing. Now they're, part of it, and that relationship can continue. So I'm wondering if it might be a good idea to keep the end in mind, but to move forward.
Yeah, no, I'm not suggesting with your project. I'm suggesting another thing, and that is important. But the way to frame it might be to connect it to an agenda, to knowing these agendas, saying we think this is important and it's critical, and it's our sense is it's not being done or not being done well enough, or there's not enough power being applied to it, and we imagine that we can help this, and this is our proposition. Would you like
what you
to?
said.
Yeah, and as I was also saying, right, I agree to what Michael is saying, right? If we are working on a co-creation activity, which actually is implemented getting implemented live, that will be something interesting to work towards. I don't know how it can be done, but that will be fun to work on.
Yeah.
Well,
so we get the immediate feedback of what's happening and whether those concepts are really working and how they're implemented.
Yeah, amazing. So I really like this connect to an agenda, and I'm zooming out because we need to zoom out because the time is up, unfortunately. I know you all would want to continue this conversation way into the night, but we have to cap it somewhere. So before we leave here, all of this is going to be taken into consideration. We're going to, put it up here and where our conversations need to go from there. But again, I'd love to continue. We'd love to continue one-on-one. Well, then we'll kind of propose a tentative strategy for the community to kind of sift through, think about, give feedback before we kind of finalize something moving forward. But the idea is to do this learning, this challenge lab, these partnerships. And so this conversation was just really about bringing everything to the surface, and then we sift through it all. So lots of sifting needs to, and more conversations need to be had. But if anybody else wants to share anything other than that, I'm going to pass it back to Jill and Paloma to close us out, and how to we stay in touch, because this community is so important to me. I hope it's important to you. And I think it's going to be great as we continue. So Paloma.
Can I just say one more thing before we end off? Could I just ask in terms of if there's anything on that board with regard to food security, whether it's local or global? I think that that's an important, and not just food, but also the incipient need for seed collection. I mean, obviously the Svalbard seed vault is there, but not all of us are going to have access to that. And I'm thinking that's the last case scenario in case of a catastrophe worldwide. But locally, if there's a catastrophe locally, how do communities stay resilient in terms of their food security for seed creation or shoots, or however they hold on to their crops, but also the security of access, of distribution. So food security, I think, is also something we might want to consider.
Yeah, I wrote that down. Thank you for adding that little bit.
Okay. Thank you all for sharing. And I think, it was a very engaging workshop. I think you all contributed a lot, which is great for the Food Hub, so that they can now take all the information in now and co-create this roadmap. I think they're doing a great job, to be honest, already. So looks exciting. Anyways, I'm just going to share some links again. Actually, I just put them in the chat, but I will just drop them in the chat once again. But it's really for you to join the hub if you want. Well, I'm sure that most of you are, but if you're not there yet, you can just join the hub. You can follow the SI Food Hub also in LinkedIn and YouTube, and well, you can just introduce yourself in the community once you join and everything. And we will also love for you to give us feedback on this event and maybe suggest any ideas that you may have for this strategy, as they're going to be working on this, and they'll just work on future activities for the Food Hub. So if you have any ideas there, please leave that in the Miro or in the chat if you cannot access. And if you want to share any other resources, we are trying to collect this from the events, and these are some of the resources that were shared, I think, in the previous one. But if you have anything else that you want to share, you can just drop it in the Miro. And these in the bottom are the ones that the SI Food Hub have been working on, and I think actually there's one that is missing. So I think you actually did another paper or something else. But the SI Food Hub have been actually working a lot on papers and a toolkit and some things that you can check out if you join the Food Hub group. So go ahead and do that. And I think that's it, really. I know we are, past the time. So really thanking you all for just, joining us today and for actively participating. I think it was great to have you with us. And we hope to see you in the next ones. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. It was a stimulating conversation. Looking forward to the next one.
Yes, thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sadesh.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.